Welcome back to another episode of Beyond Rockets. In this episode, I sit down and talk with the owner and editor of the Scout Guide Huntsville, whose mission is to support and celebrate local businesses, owners, entrepreneurs, and makers. First off, thank you for taking the time to sit down and talking with me. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure, my pleasure. I'm so glad to be here, Clark. I've been waiting to be invited to Beyond Rockets. I'm Dawn Pumpelly. I'm the owner and editor of the Scout Guide Huntsville. Scout Guide is really meant to help us shine a spotlight on the best of local businesses, and then at the same time to help our audience find ways to live well locally by connecting with those businesses. We like to tell the story of the faces behind small local business, and we do that in our print guide and in our social media and on our website.
So I know looking at your website, I was able to kind of pull some information on your background a little bit. So I know that you're originally from Philadelphia, but that you said that you often visited Huntsville while growing up, and you actually went to college in Suwanee.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you eventually ended up moving here in 2002?
Sure. Well, my dad and my stepmom moved here in 1983, and I was a little girl then. I was still growing up in Pennsylvania. And strangely enough, I have this story about when I was 11 years old. I vowed I would never live in Huntsville, Alabama, which is hilarious. I think a lot of people tell you that.
Of course, they do. Huntsville was not the place.
No, it's not the place. But, years change, we change, places change, and Huntsville has changed tremendously in that period of time. Really, it was a very nice small town in 1983. But as things progress and develop, Huntsville has become a really special place. And, so fast forward, what is that, like 30 some years or something? I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. I think that this is really such a special community, and we have access to nature and outdoors and businesses and really exciting people who are very committed to making our community a great place. So between here and there, a lot has changed.
Yes.
But in 2002, my husband and I moved to the Huntsville area full time. We came in with the goal of taking over my parents' business, which was the senior living business. We had several communities within about 3 hours of here. And so that's why we moved here full time then, and just fell in love.
So prior to the Scout Guide, like you said, you moved here in 2002, and you were kind of working with your family business and doing that. What was your background in, and what degree did you get from Suwanee? And were you using that degree for what you were doing with your parents, or is that something you were completely different things?
Well, so my college degree is in political science. So actually, I did a brief stint in Washington, D.C., and realized that I enjoyed politics in study more than in practice. And that took me about 6 months, and I quickly switched away from that. I think the one thing that Suwanee did give me, it's a liberal arts college. I learned how to write. I learned how to talk. I learned how to process. And, those are all skills that I think later sort of fit into sales, public relations, marketing. Yeah. So unlike you, my degree is not in what I'm doing, but, I've learned a lot over the years. And I think working in a family business was always challenging for me. Working with my parents was hard, my brother, but at the same time, I learned so much from them that I'm able to apply even today. Even though that was senior living, I apply it in business and as an entrepreneur.
And I think that's kind of the craziest thing is, like, there's a lot of things you learn in different industries and different skills that can be very overlapping in the business side of things, but the industry itself are completely two different things. I mean, you're able to work with a lot of small businesses in what you do now, but senior living and small businesses are very different. I mean, the day-to-day is a lot different. Yeah,
it is. But, I think in terms of being an entrepreneur, sort of like you are as well, I think just being curious, it really pays dividends in almost any industry. Like, ask a lot of questions, be curious about people, figure out how they are doing what they do, and then that ultimately helps you in the long run.
So I know a little bit about the structure of the Scout Guide, and that someone, I forgot where it was founded, but someone in their local city can decide that they want to be the owner and editor for their local city and kind of be able to showcase their city and the local scene within their city. Can you tell me a little bit more about that process and how that actually works? Yeah, absolutely. So the Scout Guide started in Charlottesville, Virginia about 11 years ago. 2 women founded it. They actually started as a blog that they wanted for people to visit Charlottesville to know, where to eat, where to shop, that sort of stuff. And what ended up happening was locals started saying to them, hey, we like what you're doing too, because you're helping us find local businesses. And so it wasn't just for visitors. Yeah.
So that blog eventually transitioned to be an annual print guide that came out. It's sort of like a photo lookbook of the best of local businesses. And so from there, they ended up actually franchising the business. So I bought the franchise for the Huntsville area. That's why my title is owner editor, because I sort of wear both hats. I own this local business. And so Scout Guide, I think, is in about, we have a couple new cities rolling out actually in the next couple months. Birmingham is coming back. Charleston is coming back. So we'll be in 65 cities.
Wow.
Was primarily on the eastern seaboard and then in the southeast, but we are out to Phoenix and Tucson and Boise and Aspen. So it's really growing. And I think part of it is, I mean, yes, it's a franchise. And at its heart, it's advertising. But the mission, I think, really resonates with a lot of people. Like, how do you really connect deeply with your local community? And so for me, it's very much that. It's a business, but it's also a personal mission.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of a crazy, like the mission you said behind it. I mean, you're able to, it shows the small businesses, the entrepreneurs, the makers in a whole different light than what normal people get to see on a daily basis. I mean, they are like you said, the print guide is literally just kind of a lookbook. You're able to see all these people, see the faces behind the business. And I think that kind of creates that sort of connection with the people that haven't visited with them, or the people that even live in the same city that just forgot they existed. Kind of, they're able to see like the owner's face and be able to connect with them, so that when they do come into the shop or into their studio, they know they're the owner and they know they can talk to them about what's going on.
Absolutely. Like Brooks and Collier is a perfect example. They just celebrated their 75th anniversary this past weekend. You know, Kim and Greg and Foster, they're all family who are in the business. Greg's grandfather started the business.
Wow.
People like to know that. They like to walk in the door, and they also like to know that, you know, Lucy and Ivy are the shop dogs. But I mean, we see that so much even on when we are putting messaging out there, like in our social media. If it's a picture of Kim and Greg and Foster and the dogs, I mean, people go nuts. The likes go through the roof when it's the people behind the businesses. And I think when you really connect with Greg and Foster and Kim, if you need, you know, outdoor furnishings or a new grill, you're much more likely to go there and shop there because you know them than go online and order from a faceless, you know, business somewhere else. And that's the goal.
So this idea of the Scout Guide, you said, is kind of moved across different cities all across the Southeast, and everything, all the way to even Arizona. When did you first have this idea to bring this to Huntsville? And did you see the Scout Guide, and did you in a different city, and were you visiting a city and someone recommended the Scout Guide? Like, how did that interaction and that thing actually come about? Well,
this is actually, I think, kind of an interesting story. So thank you for asking. So I had stepped out of my family business. I was trying to decide what I wanted to do. I actually was going to be a stay-at-home mom for a little while, and realized after about 3 months, I'm not stay-at-home mom material. I'm a much better mom when I'm engaged in work as well. So that's a good thing to learn about yourself. And I was so excited about what's going on in Huntsville. There, you know, the Seelys had developed the Bell Cuts and Lofts. There were, Chad Emerson had come to Downtown Huntsville Inc. There were just some really positive moves that I saw happening. And I thought, okay, I know what I don't want to be, and I really think that I want to be engaged in something that helps support what I saw was a really amazing time that we were entering into for Huntsville. So I actually took the guide from another city. I had found it because a classmate of mine from Sewanee had been an editor somewhere else. So it was just a weird, like, I saw her posting on Facebook. Almost like a
coincidence, a little weird coincidence.
Totally, yes. And then when I started doing research, there were actually 3 women connected to my college experience that were involved in Scout Guide, but I didn't even know about it. So anyway, I took the guide and I sat down with some really insightful people. I tried to keep it really quiet because I didn't want anybody else to get it before I did. But people like Dennis Madston, who works in the city planning department, who I think really had a good sense of where things were going, or Sasha Seeley, who she and her husband developed Bell Hudson and the Avenue, who had really, I think, sort of stuck a shovel in the ground and put their money behind it and said, we are going to be the first people here doing some of this cool stuff. And I admired them. Leslie Eklund, who's the CEO of Burritt. I just, people that I thought were creative and contributing. And I sat down with them and showed it to them. And unanimously, they all said they thought we should have a Scout Guide at Huntsville, that Huntsville was ready, and they sort of, it's different than anything else. And it was, it was just sort of special. And so that's why I started working on it. I will tell you, Clark, I spent about a year with spreadsheets trying to figure out if I could make the Scout Guide work in Huntsville. And there was not a spreadsheet that said yes. But it was a leap of faith. Yeah. And I decided to do it. And, when you buy a franchise, you have to put money up front. So I had to really figure out, did that feel right? And I decided to do it. And I think this is a true testament to Huntsville. At the time that we printed the first guide, which took a year to produce, Huntsville was the most successful first guide the company had ever had. And I think that really, truly is a testament to our community and the fact that people wanted to see something like that succeed.
So you moved here in 2002 and you're kind of doing that. And then, so what was the time frame of you when you first kind of got into the franchise to when that first year and the first volume came out?
I'm really bad with the passage of time. I think it was 2018.
Okay.
2017 is when I signed my contract, and then 2018 is when the first guide launched.
Okay.
So it took a year. It takes a year to put it together.
Yeah.
And then it's been every year since, every day, obviously, with the social media and the website.
There's always something going on.
Yeah, always something going on. And so we just launched our fourth guide last month. We're going to do a party celebrating it this week. And then actually I'm already starting to put the next guide together.
Oh, wow. So you mentioned a little bit just about the local scene and kind of what Huntsville was like when you first came. Mm-hmm. There really wasn't very many, like the local scene was nowhere near as much as it is now. I think there was a couple local businesses, and local businesses have always been here. Mm-hmm. They've always had their footing. There's been places like Brooks and Collier, Harrison Brothers, like all those places have been here for a while, but the growth in like the local coffee shops and the restaurants have really grown over the last few years. How did it look like when you first moved here? I mean, like I said, you said you would never move back to Huntsville, and now you're here and you're engulfed in what Huntsville has to offer. How does that change in your experiences being here?
Yeah, well, even when I moved back in 2002, my husband and I had gotten married. We lived in Atlanta. And I thought, I would never move back to Huntsville as a single person. But now I'm married and we had planned to have a child.
It's a small town vibe. It's kind of has that like homey feel.
Right. And I didn't need to be going out Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, which now you can go out every night here in Huntsville. But then, the sidewalk's still closed up. We did move here. And actually, interestingly enough, we lived in Scottsboro. We decided if we weren't going to live in the big city, Atlanta, we wanted to live in the country and we wanted to live on the water. So we did that. And we commuted for about 3 years.
Okay.
And I think that was all of that, things started happening in Huntsville. Back then, 2002, we didn't really have a local coffee shop. We did. There was one. It was called Seattle South.
Okay.
And it was off of Whitesburg, sort of over where Please Reply and Stakeout and Personal Couture are. And I think it had a fire and closed down.
Okay.
So back behind where the first Starbucks in Huntsville was. Was Seattle South, and that was the coffee shop.
Yeah.
But even then, Huntsville community in 2002, I think a lot of people found it odd that you would pay $3.50 for a cup of coffee.
Oh yeah. I think there's always been that Huntsville's always had those. I think Huntsville's growth has definitely changed throughout the years. You have these bigger companies that have come here that's kind of helped Huntsville grow, and then they've but they didn't really grew the local scene. The local scene was, even though there was a lot of technology and Redstone Arsenal and all that here, the local scene wasn't really growing at the same rate that was for a while. And I think now, they're both just taking off, and Huntsville's becoming this huge and incredible city. I know with working with a lot of small businesses, you probably often get asked, what are some of your favorite local businesses to go to for coffee or a pastry or just to eat or just to hang out? And so if someone's listening and they're not from Huntsville or they're visiting Huntsville, or even they're a local and they want some recommendations, what are some of the places that you love to go in the local community.
Okay, so you asked about coffee and pastries, but I'm more of like a wine and cheese kind of girl. So I'll tell you, I mean, I love Domain South on the square, and actually they're getting ready to move and open this week.
Little other location.
Super excited about that. That is like really cool to watch her growth.
Yes.
And even the staff, the people who work there who are like now contributing at a really high level. That's really cool. I really like Church Street Wine Shop and Purveyor and the Church Street family of restaurants. They're fun entrepreneurs to watch because they try something, and if it doesn't work, they try something else.
Yeah, and they have done that downtown, and I think that's some of the things like you mentioning them. I mean, people don't really I don't think some people understand and know just how many things they do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And now Sea Salt, the raw bar, which is, exploded on the scene because they really, everything they do well, Stephanie and Matt, but they also, figure out where there's a niche, and that's a niche. I mean, if you go to New York City, there are raw bars on every street. Well, they've put our first one here in downtown Huntsville, and I think that's really cool. I mean, I could go on and on and on. I mean, I love working with Ceramic Harmony. They are, they do countertops, marble, stone, surfaces. Just craftspeople like you would not believe. They have equipment and things that do cuts and construction and manufacturing that nobody else has in town. If you go there and look at what they do, it's second to none.
Yeah.
And they're people are hiring them from 6-7 hours away because they are creating something there that the rest of the country doesn't even have. Yeah. That's pretty cool. I think they won like the Marble Institute's Bathroom of the Year award, which, there are...
And from Huntsville.
Right, exactly. And they're neat people. They're actually originally German and have lived here for, I think, 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And
there's just so many local businesses now, and there's a lot, like downtown has become this booming place too, where you can walk throughout all of downtown and visit a new local business at every corner.
Totally agree. And it's bigger than that, which is exciting. You can go to Decatur, like Carriage House is one of my favorite boutiques in Decatur. It's been around for 50 years, but the two women who own it now, Nicole and Kate, they've owned it for maybe 5 or 6 years. They've taken an old business and given it a new spin. High fashion. Yeah. Really nice place to shop. And the cool story behind that is Kate's worked there since she was a teenager in high school and has always been passionate about fashion. So that's what I love is really sort of learning what's going on behind the scenes.
So you mentioned it a little bit earlier, just like the jump of risk to kind of get started with the Scout Guide. Yeah. And it's definitely, it took a risk investing with the money and your time and really not knowing the response you would have in Huntsville. Would you say that you always had an entrepreneurial mindset and thought that one day you would own your own business and do something in that capacity?
I don't think so. I think earlier in my life, I probably would have considered myself to be more of a follower.
Okay.
I think that it is the confidence that I gained in working for my parents and with my parents that enabled me to be more comfortable with owning my own business. Now, there's no way I could work for anybody else. But, I think at my heart, I'm a rule follower. So in some ways, I think the franchise speaks to that because they sort of say this is the framework.
Yeah.
And then I get to color in between some lines. And I've been able to do that here in Huntsville like I do bi-weekly video series. And we develop a lot of content for our website. And so I do some things here that other Scout Guides don't do. So maybe that is sort of feeds a little bit of both sides of me, like the rule follower and the entrepreneur have come together.
So you mentioned a little bit just like creating the different content. And I know that a lot of your work is creating that content that goes into the volume as well as your content that you do on social media and your website. But what does a day in the life look like for the owner of the Scout Guide?
Well, first of all, let me just say, I don't do it all alone. So I do have a team. I work with a beautiful photographer. I think she's the best photographer in town, White Rabbit Studios. She does primarily film photography, and she's got that beautiful sensibility. that she brings to the Scout Guide. I have Sabrina Simone, who is my assistant editor and who does manage most of the social media. And actually, we're really excited. I can't tell you right now, but I have an announcement that I'm probably going to make later this week that we're bringing on a creative director to help with the photo shoot styling. So the team is expanding a little bit. So I don't do it all myself, but it is sort of crazy like that. It is like I wear many hats. You know, I do most of the client communications, the sales. I oversee the structure of the whole thing. But like even today, I worked a good bit this morning on a project for Bird on the Mountain because I'm the chair of their board. And so I'm doing, that's sort of volunteer work. And then I participated in Instagram Live at lunchtime, and I'm here talking to you. And then I'm organizing our big party that we're doing on Thursday. So, you know, I was responding to some emails with people who had inquiries about being in the guide. It's a little bit of everything. And I do love that. I think I'm a much better multitasker than I used to be. So there's that. And then there's just, you know, having the cell phone and being able
communication.
Constant, yes. And I mean, that's good and bad for sure. But because I do have Sabrina who's handling that social media, I think I still get on there. I still interact. But that level of input was challenging for me to do all of that and everything else. So she's a really important part of the team.
So you mentioned just a little bit about like this, the benefits that you've been able to have with being a small business owner, things that you get to like, things change on a daily basis. Is that one of the things that interested you the most about being a small business owner, or what did interest you the most?
Well, I think being a small business owner is nice because you're in charge of your own destiny. And if you have the confidence to do that like you do, I think that feels really good. But I think that, maybe rephrase that question because I think I got lost in my own thoughts on that.
I know there's a lot of different things that people look at when they want to be their own boss or be their own, like have a small business themselves and kind of work their own hours. What interested you the most about kind of that idea of being your own boss and what you get to do now? Like what excites you the most about what you get to do and kind of the schedule you get to create?
I don't think I anticipated how varied and how fun this schedule would be. I mean, I think at the time I really my son was 10. I knew I wanted to be able to pick him up from school in the afternoons, and I knew I wanted to be able it sounds so selfish. And I knew I wanted to be able to go on vacation when he had school, vacation and holiday. And so that to me seemed the most appealing. That all, I mean, I don't pick him up anymore because he drives, but, you know, that all still exists and is really nice. There are some weeks that I work 60 hours a week, and then there are some weeks that I go on vacation and I don't do anything, and I'm in charge of that. And I sort of love that. But I think the energy that I get from connecting with so many people, it just keeps me going. It's really a lot of fun. And that varied nature of the job has been really special too. It was interesting in COVID how to sort of shift to not.
It wasn't a lot of separation between that. It was hard to separate it at least.
Yes. I did a ton of I did Google Meets. I don't do Zooms, but I did Google Meets, and I did a lot of those, and those work for me when I'm one-on-one because I actually still feel like I'm sitting across from a table from someone. But the whole idea of a Zoom meeting or a Zoom presentation, that I don't get enough connection from that.
It's easy to get distracted with other things.
100%. You know,
everything
phone,
on your phone.
I got 2 windows open on my desktop. I got the laptop.
It looks nice outside. I should go out there and hang out. Oh, wait, I'm in a meeting. I can't do that right now.
I mean, you can do that, but you probably shouldn't.
So looking over the last 5 years from when you first had the idea for the Scout Guide to kind of getting that first edition out to now having 4 and working on your 5th volume, what is something you know now in this journey that you wish you would have known when you first started?
I think that for me, it has truly gotten easier to have fun with it.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, being the owner and an editor of the Scout Guide, to me, really feels like a hobby. Yeah. And how cool is that, that my job is that fun? And I'm so happy doing it. I think I was still pretty nervous getting started. And really the first year or two, everything that happened was new. So everything required so much energy and brain power to figure out, okay, how do I want to do this? How do I want to handle this? Now I feel like I have, a good sense of how it needs to go and where it needs to go. Still the hardest part for me is I get my feelings hurt. So when folks, and a lot of times that happens in social, it doesn't happen that much anymore, but if somebody sort of says something that I view as negative, I do still get my feelings hurt. I'm a people person, and so that...
I think with it being kind of like, with owning your own business, a lot of it's like your baby. That's like, it's your thing that you've seen from fruition, from the start to the finish, from wherever that finish might be. So when something, I think it's a lot easier to get hurt very easily when something says something about something like that.
You said that perfectly well.
It's a very tough line to balance, and I think I even get that seen. I don't get that too much on social media, like on like just Instagram and Facebook, but occasionally when I'll do post things to something bigger, like a Reddit, and people comment, you're like, it's hard to kind of separate. Okay, I'm glad they're engaging, even if they're engaging in a bad way, but it's a tough thing to take in, especially when it's something that you love as much as what you do.
Yeah, you're right, but what I have to remind myself is that I'm not doing this perfectly.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when you get that kind of feedback, it really is meant from a constructive place. Yeah. One area that I've really been working on with the guide, and that is important to me, is that I have felt like since the beginning, the guide wasn't representative of a diverse community. Mm-hmm. And I think there are a lot of businesses in Huntsville that needed to be celebrated. And so I've sort of quietly been working on trying to be more inclusive with the guide. But really, honestly, some of my best progress in that came from people that would send me like a private message on Instagram and say, hey, I feel like this could be better. Yeah. And if I could not get my feelings hurt and turn around and say, I do too. Yeah. Could you help me? Yeah. And once I sort of shifted that, I think that has helped a lot. I don't feel like I'm there yet, but I think the Huntsville community is not there yet. And we just those of us who feel like change needs to be made, let's just keep working on it. Yeah,
and I think it's one of those things that whenever someone does do a comment like that, it's their tone, you always read it as a negative tone on the other opposite end. Even if their tone itself wasn't negative, there's only so much tone you can get from a social media comment. So I think when you sit back and analyze it less and just read it for what it is, a lot of it is just constructive criticism. And you're right. And you're able to kind of direct it and be like, yes, I see what you're saying and I will do better at that. Or I should mention, I should have them on, or I should do something with them, or I should reach out, or I should try. Yep. And even if you haven't tried, but I think a lot of people are scared just to try, and jumping out into something that's unknown and unfamiliar is a tough thing for people to do sometimes.
Agreed. And I also think that comes from when you build your own confidence. Yeah. It helps you to sort of step back and say, okay, I might not know everything. Let's see how we can work on this together.
So looking over this journey of the last 4 to 5 years, how much of your success would you contribute to your hard work, and how much of it would you contribute to being in the right place at the right time?
Oh, you want percentages? I would like to say 100% being in the right place at the right time and 100% hard work, because it's both. I think definitely Huntsville was perfectly positioned at the time that I brought the Scout Guide to town. The development of small and local business, the development of people's perception of a need to support local business, all of those things sort of came together at the right time. So yes, definitely right time. But I will tell you, I'm also a very hard worker. And I've been very passionate about it and spent the time and the energy and the focus, I think, to make it what it is. I feel like it doesn't have to be where it is. And I think, humbly speaking, I think it's in a good place. Yeah.
And I think if you can be 100% in the place at the right time, but if you 100% aren't getting the hard work, then you're just going to lose opportunities. You're right. I think with that balance of 100 and 100, you're able to really capitalize on your right place, right time.
Yeah. Something interesting about Huntsville, I know you didn't ask me this, but when I was doing that research about whether or not I was going to do this or not, a guy said to me, Dawn, Huntsville is the kind of place that if you have a good idea and you're willing to work hard for it, people will get behind you. And I think he was 100% right. And that has been my experience from day one.
Mm-hmm. And I think people in Huntsville is such a, like, it still has that small town vibe in the sense that when people see what things are going on and how things are happening, and like I said, are going to reward you in that sense of just being able to spread the word and being able to support you in what you're trying to do. And they're willing for you to even try something and fail than just not try it at all.
Totally agree. And they also, like a perfect example is Baker and Abel, the rooftop bar at the top of the new 106 Jefferson Hotel. It was packed from day one. They could barely get the doors open before people were up there because they wanted to try something new. Yeah. And that's great. It'll ebb and flow, and people will go back to their favorite spot and continue to support Baker and Abel. But it's like, okay, now we have a new rooftop bar. Let's go.
I have to try it. Yes. And like, if someone asks you, have you been there, and you haven't, you're like, well, now I got to go.
Exactly.
I want to be able to tell them why, like, things I liked, things I didn't like, I think you should visit it. I think its experience is worth it, and I think you should go. But if I can't do that, I have to go now.
You have to go, and you have to go to see the portraits of the monkeys.
Oh, I think
I love those kitschy monkeys.
I've been there a few times, and the view is incredible, the experience is incredible, and it's just like one of those things that you'll be able to appreciate Huntsville from the sky, and being able to see it in all its expanding and the new constructions and everything that's going on. You can see it from there, and it's just incredible.
And the decor in that hotel is
incredible.
Incredible. I love it. And again, that's local people. That's their local investors. The Crunkletons partner with lots of local people to make that happen. Again, you talk about people who have like really sort of stuck a shovel in the ground and said, we're going to make this happen. Roosevelt and Company, who's owned by Megan Crunkleton, they were one of my very first businesses to sign on with the guide, because they understand they're making the commitment to help Huntsville get to the next level. And the hotel where we're sitting right now here at Lincoln Mill,
Crunkleton's had a huge impact on downtown.
Yeah.
And I think continuing moving forward, they're just going to continue to kind of be, like you said, put the shovel in the ground and say, we're going to make a change, and we're going to make this incredible place to be.
Yep. And it takes people like them, like me, like you, who are all sort of contributing to this community. But I'm with you. I still like that when I go to the grocery store, people make eye contact and say hello. Yeah. And I love to travel, and I love big cities, but I do, after a few days, I'm ready to come home because I miss that part of it.
Yeah. So looking at just everything that the Scout Guide does and everything that it's trying to do in supporting local businesses, how can people connect with you and support you in what you're doing?
Oh, thanks. Yes, I would love for them to. If you go to our city website, it's actually sort of weird web address. It's huntsville.thescoutguide.com. You can always just Google the Scout Guide Huntsville and it'll take you there. We have Instagram and Facebook at TSG Huntsville. Those are the ways to follow along in social media. You can always just reach out to me, huntsville@thescoutguide.com, or give me a call. I just love connecting with local people. So whatever I can do to do that through my business, or personally, like I was saying, through some of my volunteer efforts, I really love to do.
Well, thank you again for sitting down and talking with me. I really enjoyed learning more about your story and the story of starting the Scout Guide, and I continue to look forward to ways that the Scout Guide will continue to support local businesses in Huntsville for years to come.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me here. As I said, I've wanted to do it for a long time.
Thank you.